Most men don't fail because they're lazy. They fail because they're tired. Tired from work. Tired from responsibility. Tired from carrying more than anyone sees. And when you're tired, motivation disappears first. This guide isn't about pushing harder. It's about learning how disciplined men operate when they're exhausted, distracted, and under pressure. Because that's where discipline actually matters. Anyone can stay focused on a good day. Anyone can make plans when they feel energized. But a forged mind is built on the days when you don't feel like doing anything, and you do the work anyway. Most men wait until they feel ready. That moment rarely comes. Discipline is not a burst of effort. It's a standard you refuse to negotiate with yourself, especially when you're tired. This guide is for working men, men who don't have perfect schedules, perfect sleep, or endless energy. Men who still need to show up. We're going to strip discipline down to what actually works in the real world. No hype, no motivation speeches, just steady principles you can apply immediately. Let's begin. Section 1. Why discipline fails when you're tired. Discipline doesn't usually collapse in dramatic ways. It erodes quietly. It slips when you're worn down, when your body is sore, when your mind feels cluttered, when the day has already taken more than you expected. Most men don't quit because they stop caring. They quit because they run out of energy. Tiredness changes how the brain negotiates. When you're rested, you think in long terms. When you're tired, everything becomes short term. You don't think about who you want to become. You think about relief. Relief from effort. Relief from responsibility. Relief from one more decision. That's when discipline starts to feel optional. This is where most advice fails men. It assumes you're fresh, motivated, and focused. But real life doesn't work that way. Working men operate under constant load. Physical fatigue, mental fatigue, pressure that doesn't shut off when the shift ends. And fatigue doesn't just make you slower, it lowers your standards. When you're tired, your brain starts bargaining. You can skip today. You deserve a break. Tomorrow will be better. Those thoughts feel reasonable. They sound calm. They don't sound like weakness. But they are negotiations with the part of you that wants comfort more than progress. Discipline fails when it's treated as a feeling instead of a rule. Most men believe discipline means trying harder. That's not true. Trying harder requires energy. Rules require clarity. When you're tired, you don't need more motivation. You need fewer decisions. Every decision costs energy. What to eat, whether to train, whether to save money, whether to do the thing you said you'd do. By the end of the day, decision fatigue sets in, and discipline collapses under the weight of too many choices. This is why men who rely on motivation feel strong in the morning and weak at night. It's not a character flaw. It's biology. A forged mind doesn't fight fatigue head-on. It designs around it. Strong discipline isn't loud. It's simple. It's a short list of non-negotiables that stay in place even when you're exhausted. Men lose discipline when they expect too much of themselves at the wrong moments. They aim high when they're tired. They make big promises when they should be protecting basics. That leads to failure. Failure leads to frustration. Frustration leads to quitting. A forged mind avoids that cycle. It understands this truth. When you're tired, the goal is not excellence. The goal is continuity. You don't need to win the day. You need to not break the chain. Discipline survives fatigue when standards are realistic, repeatable, and anchored to identity, not mood. This is the foundation. In the next section, we're going to dismantle one of the biggest lies men are taught about discipline, the lie of motivation, and replace it with something far more reliable. Stay steady. Section 2. The lie of motivation. Most men are taught the same lie early in life. That discipline comes from motivation. That if you feel inspired enough, you'll do what needs to be done. This idea sounds harmless. It even sounds encouraging. But over time, it quietly sabotages men who work hard and carry responsibility. Motivation is not dependable. It rises and falls with mood, sleep, stress, and circumstances. And when motivation disappears, most men assume something is wrong with them. They think they're lazy. They think they've lost their edge. They think they need a new routine, a new system, or a new burst of inspiration. In reality, they're just exhausted. Motivation is a feeling. Feelings are temporary. A forged mind doesn't depend on temporary states to maintain long-term behavior. The problem with motivation is that it trains men to wait. Wait until they feel ready. Wait until they feel confident. Wait until they feel energized. But work doesn't wait. Responsibilities don't wait. Life doesn't pause until you feel prepared. Men who rely on motivation build discipline on unstable ground. They perform well on good days and collapse on bad ones. Over time, this creates a cycle. You start strong. You fall off when motivation fades. You feel disappointed in yourself. You wait for motivation to return, and when it does, you repeat the cycle again. This pattern creates frustration, not strength. A forged mind replaces motivation with standards. Standards are quiet. They don't care how you feel. They don't negotiate. A standard says, "This gets done," regardless of mood. This is where many men misunderstand discipline. They think discipline is intensity. They think it's grinding harder. They think it's pushing through pain with force. True discipline is much calmer than that. It's simply deciding what kind of man you are and acting in alignment with that decision. A forged mind doesn't ask, "Do I feel like it today?" It asks, "Is this part of who I am?" This shift is subtle but powerful. Motivation says, "I'll do it when I feel ready." Identity says, "This is what I do." One depends on emotion. The other depends on self-respect. Men who depend on motivation burn out. Men who depend on standards endure. Motivation is loud at the beginning and silent when things get hard. Standards are quiet at the beginning and strong when things get hard. This is why disciplined men often look unremarkable on the surface. They're not hyped. They're not dramatic. They don't talk much about what they're doing. They just keep showing up. Motivation chases excitement. Discipline protects consistency. A forged mind understands that consistency matters more than intensity. Doing a small thing every day beats doing a big thing occasionally. Motivation encourages extremes. Discipline encourages sustainability. Another danger of motivation is that it encourages comparison. You see someone else working harder, posting more, training longer. Motivation pushes you to match their pace, even when your circumstances are different. That leads to overreach. Overreach leads to exhaustion. Exhaustion leads back to failure. A forged mind doesn't compete with other men. It competes with its own past behavior. Progress is measured quietly over time. Motivation wants results now. Discipline accepts results later. This is especially important for working men. When your day already demands physical and mental effort, motivation is the wrong fuel. It burns too hot and fades too fast. Discipline burns slow. It allows you to conserve energy. It allows you to stay steady under pressure. It allows you to move forward without needing to feel inspired. The most reliable men are not the most motivated. They are the most consistent. They do not wait to feel ready. They do not wait for the right mood. They do not wait for the perfect time. They operate from standards. This is the shift a forged mind makes. In the next section, we'll talk about how discipline actually works in the real world, not as a feeling, but as a system designed to survive fatigue, stress, and long days. Stay steady. Section 3. Discipline as a system, not a feeling. If discipline depended on feelings, it wouldn't survive real life. Feelings fluctuate. Energy fades. Circumstances change. That's why a forged mind treats discipline as a system, not an emotional state. A system doesn't care how you feel today. It functions the same on good days and bad ones. Most men fail at discipline because they never build a system. They rely on willpower instead. Willpower is a limited resource. It drains as the day goes on. By the time work is finished, responsibilities handled, and problems addressed, willpower is already low. That's when discipline needs to be strongest. And it's also when most men have the least energy to sustain it. A forged mind doesn't ask willpower to do heavy lifting. It removes friction. It simplifies decisions. It builds routines that require minimal thought. This is the core idea. The fewer decisions you have to make, the more discipline you preserve. Every decision costs energy. A system reduces decisions to almost zero. Instead of asking, "Should I do this today?" the system answers for you. Instead of debating, negotiating, or rationalizing, you follow a preset path. This is how disciplined men operate without burning out. They don't wake up and decide who they'll be that day. They've already decided. A forged mind sets rules ahead of time, when thinking is clear and energy is higher, and follows those rules when energy is low. This is why systems matter more than motivation. A simple system might look unimpressive from the outside. It might involve doing less than you think you should. But consistency compounds faster than intensity ever will. A forged mind understands this. It builds discipline that survives long days, bad sleep, stress, and frustration. One of the biggest mistakes men make is designing discipline systems for their best days, not their worst ones. They plan routines that require high energy, perfect timing, and ideal conditions. When real life interferes, as it always does, the system collapses. A forged mind builds for reality. It assumes fatigue. It assumes setbacks. It assumes imperfect days. And it designs standards that still function under those conditions. This means lowering the bar strategically, not lowering expectations of character, but lowering the required effort to stay consistent. This is not weakness. It's intelligence. Discipline doesn't mean doing more. It means doing what's sustainable. A forged mind values completion over perfection. It understands that unfinished plans produce nothing. Small, repeatable actions produce identity, and identity is what holds discipline together long-term. Another key element of a system-based discipline is environment. Most men underestimate how much their surroundings influence their behavior. When discipline depends on resisting temptation, failure is only a matter of time. A forged mind removes unnecessary temptation instead of fighting it. It places tools where they're easy to access. It removes distractions where possible. It structures the environment to support good decisions automatically. This isn't about control. It's about alignment. When your environment supports your standards, discipline becomes quieter. Less effort is required to stay on track. This is why disciplined men often appear calm. They're not constantly battling themselves. They've arranged their lives to reduce friction. Another mistake men make is trying to overhaul everything at once. They change their schedule, diet, habits, finances, and goals all at the same time. That creates overload. Overload leads to exhaustion. Exhaustion leads to collapse. A forged mind changes one system at a time. It reinforces it until it becomes automatic. Then it moves on. This slow approach feels unimpressive at first, but over months and years, it creates men who are unshakable. Discipline stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like identity. You're no longer forcing yourself to act a certain way. You're simply behaving in alignment with who you are. This is the end goal of discipline. Not constant struggle, not endless self-control, but quiet reliability. A forged mind isn't built through emotional highs. It's built through systems that work when emotions are low. In the next section, we'll bring this down to the level of everyday reality, the energy limits of working men, and how to stay disciplined without burning yourself into the ground. Stay steady. Section 4. The Working Man's Energy Reality. Most discipline advice is built for people who have control over their time and energy. That's not reality for most working men. When your job demands physical effort, mental focus, or constant problem solving, your energy is already spent before the day is over. Discipline doesn't fail because you don't care. It fails because your capacity is limited. A forged mind starts with an honest assessment of energy, not optimism, not ambition, reality. There are only so many high-effort decisions you can make in a day. When men ignore this, they set themselves up to fail. They plan heavy workouts after exhausting shifts. They expect sharp financial decisions when mentally drained. They try to overhaul their lives at night when their energy is already gone. That's not discipline, that's self-sabotage. A forged mind respects energy like a finite resource. You don't waste it, you allocate it. This means learning when to push and when to protect. Most men assume discipline means pushing at all costs. In reality, discipline often means restraint, knowing when not to add more. A forged mind understands the difference between effort and strain. Effort builds capacity. Strain erodes it. Strain is what happens when you demand high performance from a depleted system. Over time, strain leads to burnout, resentment, and inconsistency. A forged mind avoids this by working with energy instead of fighting it. This requires abandoning the idea that every area of life must improve at the same pace. You don't need to optimize everything at once. You need to stabilize first. Stability is underrated. When energy is low, stability keeps discipline alive. This is why disciplined men often focus on one priority at a time. They maintain the basics everywhere else. They don't chase progress across all fronts. They protect continuity. A forged mind also recognizes that energy fluctuates throughout the week. Some days are heavy, some days are lighter. Discipline adjusts without breaking. On heavy days, the goal is not advancement. The goal is maintenance. You show up. You keep standards intact. You don't slide backward. On lighter days, you can push a little further. This flexible approach keeps discipline intact long term. Rigid systems collapse under real-world pressure. Forged systems bend without breaking. Another critical truth working men must accept is this: mental fatigue is more dangerous than physical fatigue. Physical tiredness can often be pushed through. Mental exhaustion distorts judgment. When mentally exhausted, men make poor decisions. They overspend. They skip commitments. They seek short-term relief. A forged mind plans around this. It protects important decisions by making them earlier in the day when possible. It automates where it can. It reduces choice where it matters most. This is not weakness. It's strategic. The strongest discipline systems assume fatigue and plan accordingly. Another mistake men make is believing rest must be earned through collapse. They wait until they're exhausted before allowing recovery. That mindset leads to cycles of overwork and withdrawal. A forged mind treats recovery as maintenance, not reward. Sleep, food, and rest are not indulgences. They are inputs. Without them, discipline cannot survive. This doesn't mean comfort. It means sustainability. A forged mind builds discipline that lasts years, not weeks. That requires respecting limits without surrendering standards. The working man who stays disciplined over decades is not the one who pushes hardest. It's the one who stays balanced enough to keep going. In the next section, we'll narrow discipline down even further, to small standards that compound quietly and shape identity over time. Stay steady. Section 5. Small standards that compound. Most men think discipline comes from big decisions, major changes, dramatic commitments, turning points. In reality, discipline is built from small standards that are repeated consistently. A forged mind understands this early. It doesn't chase transformation. It builds identity. Small standards don't look impressive. They don't get attention. They don't create dramatic stories. But they compound quietly, and over time, they shape the kind of man you become. A standard is not a goal. A goal has an end point. A standard does not. A forged mind sets standards that apply regardless of circumstance. Not, I'll do this when I feel like it. Not, I'll do this when things slow down. But, this is how I operate. Small standards remove negotiation. They answer questions before they're asked. When standards are small and clear, discipline becomes automatic. There's no internal debate, no emotional bargaining, no waiting for the right moment. This is why disciplined men often appear unremarkable in their routines. They're not chasing breakthroughs. They're reinforcing habits that don't break under pressure. A forged mind chooses standards that survive bad days, not ideal days. If a standard only works when energy is high, it will eventually fail. Small standards work because they respect reality. They require minimal energy but deliver long-term returns. One of the biggest mistakes men make is setting standards that are too demanding. They assume discipline means pushing harder than everyone else. What actually happens is burnout. Burnout doesn't announce itself loudly. It creeps in quietly. First, standards slip. Then excuses appear. Then consistency breaks. A forged mind avoids this by lowering the minimum, not the expectation. The minimum standard is what you do no matter what. It's the floor, not the ceiling. When energy is high, you can exceed it. When energy is low, you protect it. This keeps the chain unbroken. Consistency builds trust with yourself. Trust builds self-respect. Self-respect reinforces discipline. This cycle is how men become reliable over time. Another strength of small standards is that they are specific. Vague commitments fail. I'll be better. I'll work harder. I'll save more. These statements don't guide behavior.
Small standards do. They tell you exactly what action is required. A forged mind prefers clarity over ambition. Clarity removes friction. Ambition without clarity creates stress. Small standards also reduce the emotional weight of discipline. When the requirement is simple, resistance is lower. Lower resistance means higher follow-through. Higher follow-through builds identity. Identity is what sustains discipline when motivation disappears. This is why small standards outperform big promises. Big promises impress others. Small standards change you. Another overlooked benefit of small standards is momentum. Once you start, continuing becomes easier. Action creates energy, not the other way around. A forged mind uses this to its advantage. It doesn't wait to feel energized. It acts first, even in small ways. Those actions reinforce identity. Over time, this identity becomes difficult to break. You no longer feel like someone trying to be disciplined. You feel like someone who simply is. That shift is powerful. It removes drama from self-improvement. It replaces pressure with consistency. Discipline stops being something you force. It becomes something you maintain. Small standards also create stability during chaotic periods. When life becomes unpredictable, standards provide structure. They anchor behavior. They give you something solid to return to. A forged mind understands that chaos is inevitable. Standards are the response. They don't eliminate difficulty. They provide continuity through it. In the next section, we'll explore the internal reward that keeps disciplined men grounded, quiet self-respect, and why it matters more than praise or recognition. Stay steady. Section 6. Quiet self-respect. Most men misunderstand what actually sustains discipline. They think it's praise, recognition, validation from others. Those things feel good, but they don't last. A forged mind is not built on applause. It's built on quiet self-respect. Quiet self-respect doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to be seen. It doesn't depend on anyone noticing. It comes from knowing you did what you said you would do, especially when no one was watching. This is where discipline becomes personal, not performative, not external, internal. Men who chase validation often lose discipline the moment attention disappears. When no one is there to acknowledge the effort, motivation fades. A forged mind doesn't rely on that feedback loop. It operates from internal standards. Quiet self-respect is the reward discipline gives you. It's subtle, but powerful. It shows up as confidence that doesn't need to prove itself, as calm under pressure, as reliability when things get difficult. This kind of self-respect cannot be faked. You either earn it or you don't. And it's earned through consistency, not intensity. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you reinforce it. Every time you break one, you weaken it. This is why small standards matter so much. They create frequent opportunities to earn self-respect, not through grand gestures, but through follow-through. A forged mind understands this connection. It knows that discipline isn't about punishing yourself. It's about building trust with yourself. Trust is the foundation of confidence. When you trust yourself, you don't need hype. You don't need external motivation. You don't need constant reassurance. You know who you are because your behavior confirms it. Many men feel unsettled not because life is hard, but because they don't trust themselves. They've told themselves they'd do things, and didn't. They've made commitments and abandoned them. Over time, that erodes self-respect. A forged mind repairs this slowly, not through self-criticism, through reliability. You don't fix self-respect by thinking differently. You fix it by acting consistently. Quiet self-respect also changes how you respond to difficulty. When you trust yourself, setbacks don't shake you as much. You don't spiral. You don't overreact. You don't collapse. You return to your standards. This creates emotional stability. Not numbness, stability. A forged mind feels emotion without being ruled by it. Another important truth is that quiet self-respect cannot be outsourced. You cannot earn it through status, money, or titles alone. Those things may bring comfort or leverage. They do not bring inner solidity. Men who rely on external markers often feel hollow when those markers are threatened. A forged mind anchors self-respect in behavior, not circumstances. This makes it resilient. Even when life is difficult, self-respect remains intact, because it was earned honestly. Quiet self-respect also removes the need to compare yourself to other men. When you trust yourself, comparison loses its grip. You don't need to measure your progress against someone else's highlights. You measure it against your own standards. This creates peace, not complacency, peace. You can still aim higher, but you do it without resentment or insecurity. A forged mind moves forward without needing to be louder than anyone else. This is why disciplined men often seem grounded. They're not chasing approval. They're protecting self-respect. And self-respect changes how you carry yourself, how you speak, how you decide, how you endure. It creates a quiet strength that others notice, even if they can't name it. This is the kind of strength that lasts. In the next section, we'll pull all of this together and define what a forged mind actually does, day to day, when life applies pressure. Stay steady. Section 7. What a forged mind actually does. By now, discipline should feel less abstract. Not something you chase, not something you summon, but something you practice. A forged mind is not defined by intensity. It's defined by behavior under pressure. When life gets heavy, a forged mind doesn't panic. It doesn't spiral. It doesn't look for shortcuts. It returns to standards. This is what separates disciplined men from everyone else. They don't ask what's possible today. They ask what's required. A forged mind starts each day with clarity. Not elaborate plans, not ambitious schedules, clear priorities. What must be maintained, what cannot slip. What standards stay intact no matter what the day brings. This clarity reduces stress. When everything feels urgent, discipline narrows focus. You don't try to do everything. You protect the essentials. A forged mind also understands when to move slowly. Not every moment calls for action. Sometimes discipline means restraint, not reacting emotionally, not escalating conflict, not making decisions while frustrated or exhausted. Silence, at times, is discipline. Waiting is discipline. Choosing not to act impulsively is often harder than doing something dramatic. A forged mind values timing. It knows that poor decisions made quickly cost more than patient decisions made later. Another defining trait of a forged mind is consistency of behavior across environments. Work, home, stress, fatigue. The standards don't change. This doesn't mean perfection. It means reliability. You can count on yourself. This consistency builds momentum over time, not visible at first, but undeniable after years. A forged mind also simplifies life where possible. It doesn't seek complexity. Complex systems break under pressure. Simple systems survive. This applies to finances, routines, and commitments. Fewer obligations, clearer rules, less negotiation. This creates space, and space reduces mental noise. A forged mind is not rushed. Urgency is often a sign of disorganization. Calm is often a sign of preparation. This doesn't mean slow, it means deliberate. Another important behavior of a forged mind is acceptance of discomfort, not suffering for its own sake, but understanding that progress often requires tolerating unease. Discomfort doesn't signal failure. It signals growth. A forged mind doesn't dramatize discomfort. It acknowledges it and continues. No internal monologue, no self-pity, just action. This mindset prevents discipline from becoming emotional. Emotion is unstable. Behavior is reliable. A forged mind also knows when to stop. This is overlooked. Discipline without judgment becomes self-destruction. There are moments when rest is the disciplined choice, when stepping back preserves long-term consistency. A forged mind can tell the difference between avoidance and recovery. Avoidance weakens standards. Recovery protects them. This distinction matters. Finally, a forged mind operates with a long time horizon. It's not concerned with today's outcome alone. It's concerned with who you become over years. This perspective changes everything. Small decisions matter more. Shortcuts lose appeal. Consistency becomes non-negotiable. A forged mind is patient. Not passive, patient. It doesn't need immediate rewards. It trusts the process because it has seen it work. Over time, this mindset creates men who are stable, capable, and dependable. Not flashy, not loud, but strong. In the final section, we'll close this guide by reinforcing the long view. How staying steady over time shapes a life that doesn't need constant correction. Stay steady. Section 8. Staying steady. Over the long term, discipline is not something you finish. There is no point where you arrive and no longer need it. A forged mind understands this. Discipline is not a phase. It's a way of operating. Most men struggle because they believe improvement should eventually become easy. That one day the effort will disappear. What actually happens is different. The effort becomes quieter, more familiar, less emotional. Not easier, steadier. A forged mind stops expecting relief from discipline. It expects continuity. This shift removes disappointment. You no longer feel frustrated when discipline is required. You accept it as part of life. Just like work. Just like responsibility. Just like showing up. Staying steady over the long term means accepting that progress is rarely dramatic. There are no constant breakthroughs. Most improvement happens below the surface, invisible, unnoticed, accumulating slowly. This is where most men lose patience. They don't see immediate change. They don't feel different fast enough. So they abandon what was working. A forged mind resists this urge. It understands that consistency creates results on a delayed timeline. By the time results are obvious, the habits are already ingrained. Another truth about long-term discipline is that life will interrupt it. Unexpected stress, injuries, setbacks, loss. These moments are not exceptions. They are part of the process. A forged mind does not treat disruption as failure. It treats it as a signal to return to basics. When things break down, you don't add more. You simplify. You stabilize. You return to your smallest standards. This is how discipline survives hardship, not by pushing harder, but by refusing to quit entirely. Many men think missing a day ruins progress. It doesn't. Quitting ruins progress. A forged mind allows imperfection without surrender. It doesn't spiral after a setback. it resumes. This is one of the most powerful traits a man can develop. The ability to restart without self-judgment, quietly, immediately, without drama. Staying steady also means protecting your identity. You are not someone trying to be disciplined. You are someone who operates with standards. Language matters. How you think about yourself shapes how you act. A forged mind speaks internally with clarity, not emotion. This is what I do. This is how I operate. Not I should, not I hope. This creates internal alignment, and alignment reduces friction. Over time, discipline stops feeling like resistance. It feels like maintenance. You're no longer fighting yourself. You're reinforcing who you already are. This is where confidence becomes quiet, not loud, not performative, stable. You trust yourself. You know what you'll do under pressure because you've proven it repeatedly. This trust creates calm, and calm is one of the most underrated forms of strength. Men with calm minds make better decisions. They don't rush. They don't panic. They don't chase relief. They endure. A forged mind is not built in moments of inspiration. It's built in ordinary days handled correctly. Day after day. Choice after choice. Most of which no one sees. This is why discipline must be internal. If you rely on being noticed, you won't last. If you rely on self-respect, you will. The goal of this guide was not to motivate you. It was to give you a framework that survives reality. Long days, low energy, pressure. Discipline that only works when life is easy is not discipline. A forged mind is built for difficulty, and it is built quietly. If you carry one idea forward, let it be this. Stay steady, not intense, not dramatic, steady. That is how men become reliable. That is how character is formed. That is how discipline becomes permanent. This is forged mind. Stay steady.